Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
We are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Turing Machine by Scorpion Masqué.
Turing Machine is a game that came out last year. It was very hard to get your hands on a copy because it's sold out all over the place. And I've finally gotten a copy myself. It's a game that made the top 10 of 2022 on my top 10 list, so you already know I have positive feelings towards this game. It is a numbers deduction type game in which you are trying to be the first player to figure out a code using different clues and questions that you are asking of the game itself. The game will answer these questions for you. I'll show you how that works down below. It does not require an app, but there is a website that you can go to and it will give you more puzzles for you to figure out. So this game never stops giving. There's almost an infinite number of puzzles for you to try to solve with this particular game. Let us take a look at it down below. We'll show you how it works, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, I have Turing Machine on the table. Let me show you guys how this deduction game about trying to figure out a 3-digit code is going to work. Now, with this game, you can play cooperatively, you can play solo, you can play competitively. This game has it all. And what you have with this particular game, you are going to have a lot of cards, a central board here, some number cards that are going to have an unusual punch-out hole to it, and that is true for each number and each spot that the number can be in. The numbers for this game are going to range from 1 to 5, and you can see how this little tray organizer holds all the different numbers with their different slots here, and so that's pretty nice. You also are going to have a dry erase marker with this game, as you are going to use it to mark the backs of these cards right here, A, B, C, D, E, F, and that just reminds you that this card is the A card, and it's going to go on the A spoke here, if you will. You do also have player shields that you are going to be using to shield your little note sheet here as you take notes and try to figure out the code. And while we're on that, again, the goal of the game is to try and figure out what the code is. As you can see, we've got 3 different digits. The triangle is the first number, the square is the second number, the circle is the third number, and they're all going to be numbers 1 through 5. So that's the idea of this game. How it's going to work is, honestly, it's a little complex, but once you get the hang of it, it is easier to figure out, or it's easier to play, let's say. Now, the rule book here does have a set of 20 puzzles for you to try and figure out. You can see there's 20 problems here, and the setup for that is listed for each of these. You do have the answers down here in the bottom, and those are the 20 that come with the game. However, there is a website that you can use to play, and I've used the daily challenge here. If you click on daily challenge, it'll show you can do competitive or solo and co-op, and you hit the generate button and it will show you how to set up. And this particular setup right here, this problem right here, is exactly what I have here out on the table. And so what I'm showing you here is not going to ruin anything for anyone, because this is just the daily puzzle for today, because there's an almost infinite number of puzzles for you to play with this particular game when you use the website. Now, how this game is going to work: each of these cards is attached to a verifier, or what these are called, and you're going to basically use these to help you gain clues to deduce what the 3-digit code is. So this particular verifier here is going to let you know if the circle number, which is the third number, is either even or odd. And so how a round is going to work: every player is going to make a 3-digit code. And so I'm just going to choose 111 here to be very simple. And I've got 111, and I line up all of these cards here together. And so long as the circle is in this corner, the square is in this corner, and the triangle is in this corner, that will leave one spot open, a window here, that we will be able to use to figure out on these different verifiers. Now, with my note sheet here, I am going to write 111 right here, 111, because this is my guess that I am making for this particular round. And I choose a verifier to use my code here. And so we're going to go off of this verifier here. We're going to find out if circle is even or odd. Well, if my particular guess here, I have the circle as being odd. And so we're going to compare that to the other side of this card here. This is the A card. As you can see, I have the check mark there. And so we match up the circle, square, triangle with this card here, and we find an X. Now, what that means is that the circle cannot be odd because I used an odd number here. It does not mean that the circle is not 1. In this case, it does because 1 is odd. But just because I have a certain number here in this spot does not mean that the X is telling you it's not that number. It is just simply telling you that because we chose an odd number here, the circle cannot be odd. So we know that it has to be even because of this red X. Now, had it been a green check mark, then we would know that the last number is odd. Hopefully that's starting to make some sense to you all at home. So what do I do here on my note sheet here? Well, I put an X here in the A because I used the A verifier and I got an X. And so in my notes for letter A here, I can write not odd. And so I can then mark off 5, 3, and 1 for the circle here, meaning I now know that it has to be a 4 or 2. And that's how you deduce the clues here. Let me give you another example real quick. We'll look at, let's look just here at B. Now B says the number of 3s in the code. Well, with my code here, 111, I have no 3s. And so we are going to test to see if that is correct. 0 3s. So we're gonna put this up here and we got another X. So we know that the code has to have at least 1 3, could have 2, it could be all 3s. But I would then repeat the same process here. I would put an X here on the B, and in the B here, I would have to say, has to be some 3s. So we're going to learn that we are at least going to have a 3 here in the triangle and a 3 here in the square. We know that the circle cannot be a 3 because that's odd. So we know that there's at least 1 3, could be 2 3s. That gives us some more clues to try and figure out what the 3-digit code is. Now, the round works in that I can use my code here of 111 on 3 different verifiers. So I could do this one more time, maybe going off C, D, E, or F and put the results here, take my notes. But after I have used this code 3 times, then I'm done. I can't do any more guessing. And all the other players are doing the exact same thing simultaneously as I'm doing my code. And they would pick their own codes from this deck over here. At the end, we would all declare that we're done with our guesses, we're done with our verifiers because we've gone up to 3 times, and you don't have to do 3, but 3 is the max. And then we would all stick our hands out here and we would, on the count of 3, either say, yes, I think I know the answer, or no, I don't think I know the answer. And if you say you think you know the answer, well, then you have to check it in the back of the rulebook if you are using the rulebook here. And if you are correct, then you are going to win the game. If you're incorrect, then you're eliminated and you are not going to be allowed to win. But if you're using the app here, you can test a code and put in your guesses. So we're going to say 331, for instance, or no, we know that it's got to be an even, and we will verify it and it'll tell us the code is incorrect. You are not eliminated. You still get to play the game, but you know that that is not the right answer. And then in the next round, we would try new codes. We would come up with another guess. We would go off the verifiers again, and we would just repeat this process until someone is ready to guess the answer. And if they are correct, then they are going to win the game. Now, it may happen that multiple people are ready to guess at the same time, and multiple people get it right at the same exact time. The tiebreaker is going to be who guessed the fewest number of verifiers. So this is one reason why you might not want to do all 3 of your guesses with your particular code in a certain round, because that is the tiebreaker. Whoever had the fewer number of guesses is going to be the winner. And that's how you play Turing Machine. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one.
And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Turing Machine from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective.
So heads up, if you haven't already seen it, I do have a previous video on this game from BGG Con last year in which I got to play it and I shared my quick thoughts on it after one play. And from that, I'll tell you, I really fell in love with this game really quick. This was an instant winner for me simply for the fact that it combines deduction and it does it in a manner in which you are trying to figure out these, not math puzzles, but using sort of like the experience that you might have had in math class where if A is bigger than B and C is smaller than A, then is B bigger than C?
I'm sure everybody's super excited to play this game now.
I know that's not something that probably drives a lot of excitement for some people, but this game, I feel like, does it in such a way that people can really kind of get to the table and be competitive about and bring some competitive spirit to a lot of people. I don't know, Sam, I felt like that's what you experienced as you kind of got into this game. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, Lance has talked a lot about this game before we owned it, and once we had it, he played it a lot on the solo version, so he finally got me to play it. I was like, there's no way I'm going to like this game. If he likes it that much, I'm not going to.
Yeah. That's usually the history of how gaming goes for us.
Because he just likes heavier games, and this looks heavy. Just looking at the back and like
all these numbers,
and I'm like, this seems horrible. But
the look is not a good thing for this game. I will agree with you.
Well, I mean, I think it is once you play it, and you're like, it is a really cool. I've never seen a game with this type of mechanism of
the punch board.
Yeah. Just the whoever created this, or not whoever, Scorpion Masqué, the thought process that had to go into creating something like this, I can't even comprehend that. But no, the first time you play it is a little. You have to you second guess yourself a lot. Like,
it's not the easiest thing to wrap your head around.
It's not. You have to play it a couple times. But the games are short. I mean, it doesn't take very long at all. You're guaranteed to play a couple of rounds the first couple of times just to keep going.
Right.
But it's fun. I do not like the advanced levels. I feel like it's too much. My brain is not ready for that.
And I will agree with Sam on that the most advanced levels that this game has to provide are just so complicated that it makes it more work than it is fun trying to figure out. And that's just my opinion.
Trying to figure out what these cards, what cards
they mean. Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah, so but once you're playing and you start marking things out and you start, and even just one number becomes clear, then everything kind of starts falling into place. And that's a really cool feeling and moment when you're like, okay, I do think I'm getting this. And when you do get it right, it's like, okay.
You feel rewarded. Yeah. This game does a lot for making you feel smart, or at least that's been my experience with it, because like Sam says, you slowly start to piece together some things about what the answer could be. And you're really using deduction to do that because you're figuring out a lot of things of what the answers aren't. And so with that info, you're figuring out, well, I know the first digit can't be greater than 3 and it can't be an odd, so it has to be even, so it has to be 2.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this game works, is you're putting together each of these clues to figure out all the other answers. And it's just trying to be as efficient as possible with this game. And that's so much fun for me, is knowing, okay, if I ask question A first, it will give me this info, and I can use that to then ask question C, and that should give me enough info to figure out 2 digits, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's that sort of thinking with this particular game, and when it all goes according to plan, it feels great. And then when it doesn't go according to plan, you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Either way, I feel like it's a really cool experience that, like Sam said, you just don't really see this in any other game out there. So.
And you don't have to necessarily be good at math either.
No.
It's more deduction and reasoning and things like that. There's no adding or subtracting or anything like that.
Right.
It is based on numbers, but it's not math necessarily.
Yeah. All right, so I think this is a good time for us to get to our pros and cons with this particular one. So Sam, what about Turing Machine for you as a non-gamer is a pro?
I think just the uniqueness of how they developed this game is so interesting. I think anybody, whether you will never play this game or not, just seeing it work, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And a little overwhelming at first, but just if you just think about that somebody had to do each of these cards, it's pretty cool. So I thought just the uniqueness of it was anybody can appreciate.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And then overall, on the simpler versions, because you can always make it harder, it's not that difficult.
Right.
As far as learning how to play the game. Once you've played it once and you stay maybe on that level, it does become a lot quicker and more intuitive.
Yeah.
So it is as confusing as it can look. It's really not as confusing as it looks.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think that the intro, easier type puzzles to figure out are perfect for introducing people to this game and having them wrap their minds around the mechanics and how to operate the cards with asking a question and using the numbered cards. Hopefully that makes sense. And lining them up and getting your answer.
Yeah.
Like that takes a time or two to really figure out how that works. But the easier introductory puzzles work great for helping people to figure that out. So the game is geared towards helping people understand it and play it and get to a point where they can, I wouldn't say master it, but play it better and get better at it.
Yeah.
So anything about this game that maybe doesn't work so great for you?
I wouldn't say me specifically, but some people, their brains, this just isn't going to be enjoyable for them. This is not what they consider a board game, and it really isn't. When you think of the traditional moving on a board, and some people this may not be enjoyable for them because it's just too much work. It's too much thinking, and maybe not enough payoff.
Okay.
So I could see that as a con. You need to be someone that enjoys that.
You gotta like deduction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is. You gotta like deduction, and you gotta like being able to, use mathematical deduction or numerical deduction, let's say it that way, and figuring out if the first digit is got to be greater than the second digit and it's a 4, then the second digit's got to be a 5. It's things like that.
Yeah.
So if you don't like what I just described with that, you probably won't like this game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as simple as that. Any other cons for you on this one?
Not really. I mean, Lance did all the setup, so I don't really have a view on how easy setup everything is. I just came and played it, but I think setting it up is a little bit tricky at times.
Well, it's tedious in the sense that it'll say for this puzzle you need cards A, B, and X, let's say, and then you'll also need cards 59, 78, and 162.
Yeah.
And so you just got to rifle through all of the different types of cards and make sure you're selecting the right cards. And as the puzzles get more complex, you're getting more cards and you're needing to line them up in a specific way. So that's a little tedious as far as setup goes, and it's going to be different every puzzle you do. So I guess that could be sort of a con.
Yeah.
For me, what's a much bigger con with this game is that some of the puzzles, like we've already said, I shouldn't say extremely easy, but they're geared in such a way for people to, if they're just introduced with this game, sit down and be able to understand it and play it. So you've got that into the spectrum. And then you've got the so complex it feels like you do need like a PhD to try and figure out what the heck is this even asking for me to try and figure out how I get info from that to figure out the puzzle. So you've got a wide spectrum here, and to hit that sweet spot where the puzzle is going to stretch your thinking and stretch all the players at the table's thinking so that not everybody figures it out at the exact same time is a rare thing with this game. Because I think what we've found is that if we're too far on the easier end of the spectrum, then we all sort of figure out the answer almost at the same exact time.
The same round.
And if that's the case, then we all tie, usually. But if we're too far on the other end of the spectrum, then none of us figure it out because we don't know how to get to the answer.
Yeah.
So finding that sweet spot can be a little difficult with this game.
Me and Lance have yet to play a game where we didn't figure out the answer at the same time.
Right.
Or I did not give up.
That might tell you something a little bit about how the experience is.
It was still fun to play and find that number. But it would be better if I was beating someone.
It would be better if there was a clear victory rather than, man, we shared the victory again.
So I think maybe another con it's really going to depend on what players you're playing with. Because if you have some people, like my sister is a research chemist, she does a lot of math, and so this may be our sweet spot, maybe too easy for her.
Yeah.
But her sweet spot is we're giving up.
So
it might
understand
depend,
that. Yeah.
it might really depend on who you're playing with.
Yeah. All right, scale of 1 to 10, love to hate for Turing Machine. Where does this one come in at for you?
I did like this game a lot, and I do want to play it more. It's a real brain burner, but I think in a good way. I'd probably give it... This is hard. I'd probably give it an 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that's where you were going to say.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to be right at 8
I didn't
for
want to
some
give
reason.
it to you that high.
She doesn't want to admit that it is a good game.
No.
Well, as you guys picked up from earlier in this video, it did make top 10 for me for 2022. And so, I already have really high views of it. I will admit that the more and more I play, the more and more I don't like tying with everybody. I want there to be a clear-cut victor in this game, and you just aren't guaranteed to always have that with this. So in some senses, maybe it's cool just a tad for me, but I still really do enjoy this game, and so I'm going to give it an 8.5. This is just a solid all-around experience for me, and I'm always down to play it. Unless you're saying, hey, let's go for the most extreme, most advanced puzzle with this particular one. And then I might be like, well, can you explain to me how this makes sense? And then I'll play it with you, because I feel like I need somebody to do that for me on the really hard advanced puzzles for this one. So 8 for Sam, 8.5 for me. That's our thoughts on Turing Machine. It is from Scorpion Masqué. Lots of opinions on this game. Leave us your comments down below and what you think about this particular game.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.